Welcome to the Soldier Fund podcast, the platform for untold stories from the National Guard Special Forces community. Join us as we delve into the lives of these elite warriors and the journey of our nonprofit, dedicated to supporting their courageous mission to free the oppressed worldwide. I'm your host, Ben Derrick. Let's dive in. This is an episode I've been excited about for a minute, addressing probably the most complicated part, if that's not getting out over my skis, one of the most complicated parts of being a National Guard soldier. We've got three incredible guests with us. We're going to take some time to intro them so that you know they're worth listening to. Guys, thank you so much for being here. If we could just go around table, give a quick introduction, and then we'll get into this topic.
Hey, my name is Jake. I am a former 18 Delta with 7th Group and 20th Group, and then I went to PA school and been a PA since 2016. Been a PA with a battalion in 20th Group, and just left 20th Group, and I'm currently up at the State Surgeon's Office.
Thanks for being with us, man.
My name is Brennan. I'm an Army PA. Been in the Army for about 23 years now. Started out in 20th Group in 2nd Battalion. Spent about 15 years there before going to PA school, and I came back in 2017. And I've been working State Surgeon's Office for the past few years.
So up close, you're familiar with the problem set we're discussing today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, is that a look on your face of fortunately or unfortunately?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. All right. Well, thanks for being with us.
My name's Miranda. I'm a nurse case manager. I started out as a 68 Whiskey, commissioned about 12 years ago. I've been working with the State Surgeon's Office for going on 6 years. I am not in the 20th Group.
So I'm already sensing, just by the way that you're coming in hot here, like you're the person that handles everything, right?
She's
like
the boss.
Yeah, we're going to get heady about some ideas.
We all work for Miranda.
We work for, as PAs, we know in every environment we work for the nurses, but in our environment, we
That's
definitely work for
true.
Miranda. So.
Yeah. So the reason we're actually around this mic, Jake, is you were listening to the podcast, you reached out, thankfully, and I'm very thankful for this. We have a friendship that was actually born inside of meeting each other inside the Army. But you reached out and said, look, this is a conversation we need to have. I would love to just briefly, before we get into the topic, talk about why you had that reaction. And maybe even before we get to that, and it's important to say, we're four people around the table that really care about this problem. We are not spokespersons for the United States Army or the National Guard, whatever state you may be listening in. So the perspectives that we're about to roll out in this episode are very personal. I think that's actually a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
So you had something light off in you, Jake, like, hey, we need to talk about this. What was that?
So, over the years, I have seen guys that, again, really care about, love them as brothers in arms, and just saw so many guys get to points with their health that just sad to see, and they were either unable or unwilling to get care, or they get to a point where they're ready to exit the Army and they're just not exiting well. And I think for me, it was a combination of I'm tired of seeing my brothers not exit well and not get the care that they need.
Yeah, it is certainly a complex problem, and I know most listeners right now are just bracing for the conversation that we're about to have, because it's a difficult thing to see someone who has served courageously with honor, done a lot of difficult things, and then essentially fumbles at the very end. And some would say, well, that's just how it goes. It's necessary. That's how these things happen. You guys, I think, would have a different take on that conversation, right?
Yeah, as I've been working up at the State Surgeon's Office for about 5 years now, gotten to kind of peel the layers back on how does this thing actually work? Holy cow, there is a process. It's in black and white. Right. Why did I never know this as a medic? Why did I never know this as an 18 Delta? And some of that was I had to own it, that I was a part of the problem. And then as I'm getting smarter, reading policies, trying my best to learn the process and then educate my guys on, hey, one, there is a process and let's follow it. And I promise you this is for your betterment. when you do go to exit.
So you guys would echo that sentiment that it is a complicated thing to try to navigate, but there is a framework there, and you guys actually spend all day, every day, trying to help soldiers navigate that framework.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the hardest part that people have there is they don't understand that it's for their benefit. So when you take a soldier and then you take medical, it's immediately assumed that we're trying to push you out. And that is absolutely not the case.
Where does that come from?
It starts at the recruiting office.
Ooh, say more about that now.
So we start our careers, especially those of us that have been in for a while, the early GWAT, pre-GWAT time frame, you get told, from the beginning, kind of conditioned to, don't talk about what you have, don't talk about what's going on. You need to Charlie Mike, we got a mission to do, and you need to be able to do all of these things, especially in SOF. There's a lot of requirements, a lot of things that you want to do for your career. You don't want to inhibit any of those things by showing a weakness. So you start there, and then you spend 20 plus years continuing that same conditioned behavior where if I say something, something's going to happen to me. The medical guys are going to mess with my career. They're going to keep me from going to airborne school, to SFAS, to deploying, things like that. So you start out that way at the gate, and then you continue that conditioned behavior all the way through your career. Then you get to the end and you have to pay the price. So
Yeah.
now all those things I didn't talk about, now I need to talk about.
Makes a lot of sense. Jake, I know I've seen you present in front of the formation, and you actually addressed this, that things have changed in the system over the past couple of years. There's been a pretty dramatic shift. That information hasn't trickled down to the soldier that was at the recruiting office 18 years ago. But there is a change, a shift going on inside of the system, correct?
Absolutely. So, in short, listen, the records are talking like they've never talked before. They are integrating. Not only can we see things that are happening within the DoD healthcare system, but we're seeing things also that are happening within the VA healthcare system. And then we also see what I would call participating civilian partners. And so when we scrub a medical record, we're seeing DoD, VA, and those participating civilian records. And so if there is a guy who has something that needs a waiver, then we're able to identify it. And a lot of guys, that this is their first time being told, hey man, we're going to need to get a waiver for something. And it can be unsettling for a lot of guys.
I'm sure, because it feels career compromising. Interestingly, though, when these things go unaddressed, that's what's career compromising. We see
That's
that
exactly
happen
right.
more often than not. So let's take a moment. We're roughly 8 minutes in here. Let's talk about the things that are actually affecting the formation, because part of what I have seen through my work with HPW is the more that we can talk about these things and normalize them, and also see that soldiers are getting past them in a lot of ways, the more that soldiers will recruit in some help to try to deal with them. So you guys have a very unique perspective on what the problems actually are at the end of the line. So we talk a lot about TBI. We talk a lot about allostatic lows, stress levels on the body. Are you guys seeing that as actually being true in your part of the process?
Absolutely. I'm a GWAT guy myself, came in 2002. And so what you're seeing 20 years plus of chronic stress of guys with multiple deployments, essentially living on yellow to red, getting ready for the next trip, or recovering from the last trip, getting ready for the next training cycle, showing whoever our capabilities in the next big training exercise. And at some point, that ends up wearing down on your own mental health, on your own physical health, or on your own family health, your relational health. Yeah,
that's a big deal. Yeah. Something's going to pay, I think, is part of what I try to teach the guys. Something's going to pay here. It's either going to be career, your body, your family. Everything can't win at the same time. I'll admit, though, that's very difficult to convince an 18 series guy that we can't win at everything all the time, right? You guys see that, I'm sure.
Yeah. And, they spend, like we talked about GWAT, 20 plus years, high op tempo, high training op tempo, blast exposures, low level, high level, actual, documented and significant injuries, and then the downstream effects. And it's one thing these guys are taught and conditioned to drive on through stuff, to eat pain and, continue on in their mission regardless of pain and discomfort and all those things. What they really neglect is their mental health during those things, because that's something that you can't just turn off. You can suffer through a lot of physical stuff, and your brain works exceptionally well to do that. But mental health in particular, down the line, will bite you, and that's where a lot of guys we see down the road, 20 plus years down the road, where they're suffering. That's where the symptoms really come up. And it's like, now I'm presenting with stuff because I can't do life, right? Not only am I struggling to soldier, which hurts them more than anything, but it's translating over into their daily life, their family life.
It's a very admirable characteristic. I think here's the trick about it. I think we could admit, at least the four of us, that society is trending weaker, right? And we need people who can eat pain, who can go out there and do difficult things. I mean, that's a very admirable characteristic of this community. So then to convince a soldier, hey, that's actually turned on you a little bit here, that's a trick. I'm sure you've been in that conversation a few times. How do you navigate that? Do you see these things happening in your interaction with the soldiers?
So behavioral health has become a hubbub. And what I mean by that is it is more protected now than your physical health. Those conversations that are being held are left locked down.
Okay.
So, and what I mean by that is it's protected. It is acknowledged that it is an issue and it is absolutely being addressed. A lot of the issue that we see with our soldiers when we talk to them is they don't recognize these symptoms. To them, things like PTSD is, I drink all day, I beat my wife, I kicked my dog, and that's not it.
Hiding under the table when the thunderstorm comes.
Right. But it could be as simple as...
We're not saying those things.
Right, yeah.
It can be as simple as you don't like to be around large crowds. You don't go to concerts like you used to. It can be that a loud noise kind of throws you off for a second. It could be the bad dreams that you have, but it's not as simple as, like I said before, these heavy hitting symptoms. And I've seen a lot of our soldiers, they don't recognize those, I want to say lower hanging fruit, I guess, symptoms.
No, that's a great way to say it. And I would say along with that, I have soldiers tell me all the time, well, that's everybody, right? Well, just because it's happening to a large part of the population here in SF doesn't mean that it should be happening, right? That's kind of a difficult conversation to have. What's been normalized, and part of that is the compartmentalization that we would all say together is necessary. You have to be able to compartmentalize. Yeah. And I would propose you have to be able to compartmentalize very well to get through the process to become a Green Beret. So that's already there, right? But to be able to describe the symptoms of what's going on, no matter what the larger banner is, traumatic brain injury, allostatic load, mental health, PTSD, those things I think make it very hard for the soldier to grab onto because there's a preconceived notion of what that actually is. It does come down to, well, I don't have PTSD because I wasn't in Vietnam. I'm not hiding under the bed or anything like that. It's like, well, it looks a little differently depending on who you are. Yep. Other than the things that we've talked about that you say are the low-hanging fruit, what are you guys seeing as you're interacting with soldiers on a regular basis? So I just want to put those things out there so that the soldiers that are listening can, in the privacy of their vehicle or on the treadmill, say, oh, damn, that's me, right? Yeah.
A lot of, and I'll say it varies a lot with like decade of life or when guys served, when they got in. The younger guys, the guys that have been in for 5 to 10 years at most, it's a little bit different. The guys that have been in 20 plus years, a lot of the symptoms are very similar. A lot of the things they complain about, the musculoskeletal things, the physical injuries, a lot of that stuff is kind of the same from person to person. The mental health and behavioral stuff, though, is I can sit there in an office with a guy and I'll say, hey, have you talked to behavioral health? Are you seeing anybody? And they're like, well, no, I'm good. That's always the thing. I'm good. And, I say, well, I'll tell you this, that if you were a GWAT era guy, there's not a single one of us that deployed and went through that and came out clean. So there's something. Let's talk about it. So I tell each one of them, especially when they're going through retirement, don't compare yourself to another veteran, right? Don't compare your situation to another veteran, because then you'll start questioning your merit, and you'll say, my issues aren't near as bad as that Vietnam vet, or that guy got his legs blown off. Why am I complaining? Because that's what we do. Compare yourself to the civilian counterpart, the guy that graduated high school with you, that's sat behind his, family's company desk for his whole life.
Yeah.
All the things that you experience in a day, physical and mental, how much of that would he consider normal? What would he look, if he had those symptoms, any of them, would he run to his doctor? And when you put it into that framework, they're like, oh, damn, I'm pretty messed up. So,
Right, yeah.
And the symptomology may be, a huge constellation of alienation, isolation. I'm happiest when I'm alone. I don't enjoy things anymore. The anhedonic features, like, I don't enjoy things unless I'm with my guys. I was happiest when I was deployed. I don't like big crowds. I get angry when I'm driving. And then there's the extreme versions of that where people are self-medicating, drinking themselves, into a hole, or losing their job, beating their family, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
But it exists on a pretty wide spectrum from what I see.
I see a lot of nods over there, Miranda. You recognize this list.
I do. And to kind of peel the veil back off on, so I'm privy to a lot of medical records. It's happening, and people are getting treatment, and they're deploying, and they're staying in.
Yeah.
It's okay to admit that something's going on with you if you can actually recognize that that's happening,
right,
and get treated. We can literally deploy people on 3 behavioral health drugs with a waiver.
That's actually happening.
Absolutely.
Do it every time.
And I see a lot of people every day, for health assessments and screenings and things like that, and ask the same questions, and when we talk about behavioral health, I say, do you see somebody? And if they do or if they don't, they're always kind of reluctant to say whether or not they do or don't. But I've gotten to where I assure every single one of them that I will make sure that if you want to see behavioral health, or you already do, that it's not going to mess with your career.
Right.
That is not what we're supposed to do. Like she said, we're not the gatekeepers in the sense that we're shuffling you out. We're not trying to keep you from deploying, doing your job, or, separate you from the Army. We're trying to make sure you can continue service safely, help stay healthy, and return to your family appropriately. We can't break you and then send you home broken. We need to keep you healthy and safe. And so telling these guys that it's okay, you can see somebody, we're going to take care of you. And I tell them there's only 2 things that I really worry about that will turn on some flags, and that's if you pose a risk to yourself or somebody else. Other than that, it's just maintenance. It's 10-level maintenance on a piece of equipment, just making sure that this piece of equipment that is the soldier is ready and deployable and usable, and again, can return home appropriate.
Yeah, a very expensive piece of equipment.
Very expensive. Yeah.
Jake, I remember the first time I saw you present was at a YTC. You stood up in front of the room, and this is how you started. I don't even know if you remember this, TBI, but you said, "Let's talk about non-deployable." That's how you started everything. I was like, man, this guy's got an edge. I like him. So I think guys are becoming more and more comfortable with, let's just say, acknowledging. Like, yeah, there's some weird things going on, but I'm good, but taking that step to engage, receiving help. I say this a lot, and I think we should say it in this episode as well. This SF population is used to, conditioned, built to be the helper. There is a problem somewhere on the planet, and I am getting on a plane to go solve it, right? So when they have to be the helped, when the soldier has to be the help, that's quite a shift. That's a little bit of a different transaction. So I can acknowledge and have some compassion for that mental shift that has to occur. But there are people in the organization like you guys that are there to help that transition happen correctly, that understand the life of the soldier. It's a little different than being out there in Gen Pop, being a civilian. And I can tell you, I've never come home from the grocery store and cleared my house. Not once, ever. Jordan asked me that in front of a group of guys every time we deploy these outlying companies. Hey, Ben, have you ever cleared your house? I'm like, well, I've cleaned my house. I've never cleared my house, right? So when you juxtapose it to someone who has not spent a significant amount of time, I think particularly in SF, you see these differences start to come to light, right? So the question is, I guess the real question we're trying to address today with this episode is, what do we do about this? Okay, problem identified. What's the solution set? Where do we go from here?
So I think first, step one is saying, hey, I need to get some care. Whether it's physical health, mental health, I need to get some care. Step two, are you enrolled in some sort of healthcare system, right? And it sounds super basic, right? But it's huge. It's a huge part of being a National Guard guy is, are you even enrolled in TRICARE? Right? That's not an automatic thing. You have to raise your hand, call a number, and say, please put me in this thing, right? If you're a traditional guardsman, TRICARE Reserve Select. And so one, do you have a way to get care? If it's not TRICARE, are you enrolled in the VA? Are you eligible for VA care? And then if you are you enrolled? And that's another way to get health care. So step one, identify I need care. Step two, are you enrolled in anything to get care?
So for the soldier listening who says, hell, man, I don't know. You tell me. Like, does that conversation, I bet that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I know Miranda will attest to this. When we do PHA events and, big medical events, there's always a percentage of that population that is not enrolled in TRICARE and has no other insurance. And it's like, well, you're not green on dental because you don't go to the dentist, bro. So, let's get you signed up. So she spent entire drill weekends signing people up on TRICARE and TRICARE Dental. So there is a huge percentage of those guys. Mm-hmm. And, most of them, if they don't know, then the answer is no.
Right,
But if the answer is no and you're not sure how to do it, talk to somebody. I mean, readiness NCOs, a senior NCO, an officer, somebody will be able to tell you, how to get enrolled if you're not already.
Mm-hmm. And although this is not unique to SF, it's more common in SF. Our guys are, especially our M-Day guys, they're mobilizing, deploying, and coming back fairly frequently.
Right.
And so they're involved in what I call the TRICARE dance. Like, hey, you've got coverage. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You've got coverage only for the next 6 months. No, you don't.
Right.
And so you've really got to learn how stay on top of, hey, I need to call and I need to get enrolled again. Because when guys let that lapse, that's when you get into guys talking about, I did have a doctor. Well, I don't anymore. Well, hey man, did you call TRICARE? Did you stay enrolled? Mm-hmm. And again, you don't know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. But that's a huge part of it.
And I say married soldiers are less likely to have that problem. Household 6 usually controls that part of things. It's like, hey dummy, it's 6 months, tamp's over, and you need to re-enroll the TRICARE. Mm-hmm. So those guys are usually pretty taken care of because of household commander.
Boy, there's a phrase, right?
Yeah.
Also, I'd like for it to go on record. You call them dummies, not me, right? That's how that works.
To be clear, I was referring to household 6 calling them dummies.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
So if their wives call them dummies, it's not my fault.
Yeah, step one would be engaging a way to get health care. Mm-hmm. Now, let me just be the devil's advocate here. Yep. You've already mentioned it. Guys are like, hell no, I'm not talking to one person, because now when you talk to one person, you're talking to all 15 people, and they got 55 screens up with all your shit displayed. I'm not doing it. What's the answer to that?
So I'm going to jump in on this one. Knowledge is power. There's a whole regulation. AR 40-501 Chapter 3 is the only chapter that they need to worry about that will walk you through by system what will disqualify you from service. So if you know ahead of time that you have this issue, mm-hmm. right? The other part of that is you have up to a year to get better. Mm-hmm. So if it's not a permanent condition, if you have a knee injury, mm-hmm. right? Maybe you need a knee replacement, but you have a year in order to heal before you meet what we call a medical retention determination point.
Okay.
So, and a lot of people don't know that. They think as soon as they get sick, cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have soldiers that have had cancer and they're in remission. As long as they're in remission and, they had that time to go through their treatment.
Mm-hmm. You'd really be surprised what conditions, disease states, injuries, joint replacements, things like that, you can have and still be retained.
Yep.
I mean, there's the joke is, and we say it all the time, where there's a will, there's a waiver, and just about everything can be addressed in a nuanced way. And we can look at this guy as an individual and say, what's the benefit to keeping him? What's the risk to keeping him? And, we lay that out, and board reviews happen, and we get guys retained all the time.
Yeah.
So,
and the vast majority of the time when you're talking about our SF soldiers, there's so much training and time put in these guys. They're a worthwhile retainment,
Of course.
And so we're going to do our best to keep them retained, but also get them care. But one of the things I tell guys is, hey, man, I just need you to get care. I need you to get healthy. I need you to take a knee for 3-4 months and get this taken care of.
Yeah.
And I, coming from that, I was one, I is one, right? That's a hard thing. That's a hard mental hurdle to get over. What do you mean take a knee?
Yeah.
For 3 to 4 months. But that's sometimes what needs to happen. I need you to take a knee for 3 to 4 months, get healthy, whether it's your head space or whether it's your shoulder, and then come back stronger.
So let's talk about this for just a second, because the temperature in the room just changed. We're talking about now how this works out at a team level, I believe. These teams are tight. They know each other very well, and there's a huge level of personal responsibility to not let the team down.
Yep.
So taking a knee in a lot of circumstances feels like betrayal of the team.
Yep.
How do you navigate that mentally and emotionally? Because we know that it's necessary. I just want to make a sound case that it's legit and can actually happen for a guy that's on a team.
well, I can say as a support guy coming up in the battalion, the team guys care about their team members more than anything else. And their ability to provide for that team and be a valuable part of that team is like part and parcel of who they are.
Yes.
So if that's suddenly taken away, it hurts, right? It's a hurt. But we've got to get to some part of the conversation where it's like, hey, you're taking care of the team better by taking care of yourself right now. It's like the parents that aren't taking care of themselves and deteriorate and because they're overdoing it with their kids. Mm-hmm. You have to be capable for the team to contribute to the team. And if we're letting your mental health and behavioral health or physical health get to a point where now you are not capable, then you're not providing to the team anymore. And then eventually we're going to have to let you go. So you got to see things through to that consequence. Like what are the consequences of my behavior right now? Mm. And so, I mean, as not an 18 series guy trying to understand that mentality, I get it to some level just as a guy, as a soft guy, but being a team member, it's different for them. So trying to explain to them like, hey man, no, it's okay. We're not taking you off. We're not getting rid of you. We're trying to keep you capable. Yeah. And I think that matters to them ultimately, but trying to get past that mental barrier, I don't know.
Yeah. And certain things are going to be seen from leadership, right? Your team sergeant probably knows you're not putting out 100% because you can't. Yeah. Your company sergeant major probably knows what's going on. He probably sees it. And so some of it's the medical professionals at the state level and at within the battalion, just having that conversation about, hey, let's let Bob take a knee for 3, 4, 6 months, whatever needs to happen, right? Mm-hmm. Let's get him healthy. Let's get him back to the team. I think, but understanding that it's temporary, we're going to get him back. We're going to do everything we can. And man, I intimately understand this. And I don't talk about this a lot, but in 2008, I actually got hurt overseas. Got shot through the neck, and
you're the only guy I know that would say I got hurt. By that I mean shot through the neck.
And didn't end up leaving country. Stayed in the hospital for 2 days, and then went back to my team. Was back to my team 10 days later, and back in combat 30 days later. And the fear of letting my team down was greater than the fear of getting hurt or killed again. Mm-hmm. So it's a very real thing, right?
Yes.
You've just spent years of your life dedicated to becoming a Green Beret becoming a trusted team member. You finally have that trust, and you don't want to lose it, right? That's a hard-won trust. And guys will do anything to avoid losing that trust.
Mm-hmm. And even with your perspective, and I appreciate that backstory, I think it helps our listeners understand that you're a voice of reason, backed by experience. But I did hear you say a couple of years ago, and I thought this was genius, by the way. You said, if I was with you and I went down, could you get me out?
Yep.
That's the test. At
the end of the day, I think every soldier, but every Green Beret on a team has to look themselves in the mirror and has to look their buddy in the eyes, and really has to look their buddies' families in the eyes and say, I will bring him back home.
Yeah, because I am capable.
Because I am capable of doing that.
Yeah.
But, man, if I can't drag my buddy behind cover because my shoulder is so torn up, or my knee is just so gone, or my headspace is so off that I'm no good to the team, then I think you have a moral and an ethical obligation to take a knee, go get fixed, and then come back.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. And I think what we're saying today, too, is that when you're taking a knee, when these guys are taking a knee, they're not alone. They may be separate from the team for a while, a number of months, as far as training, op tempo, that kind of thing. But they're not out there by themselves with no top cover. You guys are there, and your positions are represented across the United States for National Guard, SOF. Like, there are people that can grab you and say, I know what to do, follow me. That's there, right? Let's talk briefly, though, about engaging the civilian medical system, because this is another layer of complexity. Which route do I go? Do I go over here to civilian medical? Do I go over here to military medical? And especially when I get over into civilian, we talk about this frequently, but we have soft guys go into a GP, and the GP just wants to hear war stories for like an hour, right?
Yeah.
So we've rehearsed that. But even when we get past that, it's like there's very limited understanding about the lifestyle and what it causes. You guys know that, but the guy, my local doctor, might not understand that. So how do the soldiers navigate that best?
It's not easy.
No. I know, working as a civilian provider, it's, again, I have a different perspective. I have a unique perspective as an Army PA. When I see patients, especially, veteran patients, I understand things a little bit better about them and their differences between their civilian counterpart patients. But seeing as a veteran myself, going to see a provider, deal with the same hurdles. A lot of the things that we experience on like a usual and daily basis as veterans are pretty freaking uncommon on the outside. And you'll talk to providers and they're like, how are you functional? How are you still working? How are you still doing this? Why aren't you on 10 meds? Why haven't you had your shoulder fixed yet? Things like that. And it's just what we do, and so there is an inherent, some things soldiers historically will say, no, I'm not going to see the Army doc. I'm not going to see the Army dentist, sawbones, and, the tooth puller. I'm going to go to the civilian side where they're going to take good care of me. And, there's a tendency to believe that you're going to get better care on the outside, but that they're also going to probably overdiagnose you. Like they're going to throw diagnoses at you constantly and tell you how messed up you really are compared to, the regular population.
Yeah, because they're seeing, me's all day, not you's all day, right? I would say, though, that you guys as representatives could have proper first step. Okay, let me call a group PA. Let me call a PA. They most likely will know someone or know how to get to someone that understands the SOF culture. That's a thing, right?
So, yes, it is. It is a thing where guys talk, providers talk. We know the ones that are going to be a little bit more understanding, and then the guys that have gotten care, they're absolutely going to say, that dude or that dudette, they took good care of me.
Yeah.
And so, one of the reasons why it's so important to go get care is, you may be the number one man and through the door and getting care, but if you get good care, you tell your other guys, hey, man, I found some really good stuff, and you tell them about that.
this stuff spreads, right? The good stuff spreads. Would it be too much to ask for an example of where that partnering has happened correctly?
Oh, absolutely. So, civilian side, I wasn't working full time for the Guard, but as a civilian provider, had a veteran buddy of mine as a patient come in, and I was working primary care, and he needed a specialty referral. So he's like, "Man, I need to make sure that this happens in a way that doesn't screw me up, and I need to be taken care of. I need care." So don't worry about it. I'm going to refer you to this guy, and I'm going to call him. So, I mean, not just a referral faxed over, emailed,
I see.
Unpersonal and, no information really other than the patient data.
Yeah.
Call the guy and say, "Hey, man, here's what I got, and I'm going to send this guy to you. I need you to take care of him, but I need you to keep me in the loop, and here's what we're worried about." Guy got taken care of. Everything was good. He didn't get over-treated or under-treated, and he's still doing what he's supposed to be doing. So, no harm to his career, no harm to his function. Right?
Yeah. You were the warm start.
Yeah, and they do that on the full-time Guard side all the time.
Okay.
Especially if they know that they have friends of SF in medical. And that's kind of like a soft behavior anyway, is networking and utilizing your internal resources before you reach out to the public. And they'll call one of us and say, "Hey, I need this, but wink, wink, nod. I need to take care of this in our way,"
Yeah, exactly.
So we get them plugged in and get things documented the right way. But
it is a methodology. The care of the soldier is never compromised, but it helps dodge, as you so appropriately put, the overdiagnosis and the comparison to a civilian. That can be extremely frustrating for the soldier and cause them to step out of the process completely. Miranda, part of my curiosity is, how many of you are there? Right? Do we have a capacity issue inside the system?
Oh, there's only one Miranda, just so we're clear.
I saw her trying to figure out if she was going to say that or not.
Yes. So every state and territory has a state surgeon's office, and currently everyone has a nurse case management contract.
Okay.
So there are nurse case managers assigned to each state.
Okay.
And I can say from my foxhole that we're underutilized.
Okay.
We're constantly reaching out when we come across issues, as opposed to soldiers being referred to us. And I can speak for the team I'm with. We're hungry to help.
Okay.
We want to help the soldiers. It's just making that connection, and it starts at the top. It's not just from the soldier level. I've got full-time staff that still doesn't know we're there. And I'm not really sure how that happened, but but it's an issue. Going back to what we were talking about, trying to, find civilian providers, again, that's where your state surgeon's office is going to absolutely be vital, because that's where all the magic between your actual providers is happening.
Okay.
So, for instance, your state surgeon, him or her, they're going to have a lot of connections within your state.
Yeah.
They're going to know a lot of their doctor buddies or a buddy of a buddy. And so if some of these issues that, one of your soldiers is having needs to be addressed, they'll be able to make that referral in the right way.
Yep.
To the right person.
Yep.
Whether it be VA, whether it be civilian. I don't talk badly about the VA, but something that a lot of people don't realize is the VA actually sends a lot of they refer out. A lot of things aren't done in-house. They don't have that capability.
Yep.
So even if I sent you to the VA for an orthopedic follow-up, they're going to send you to another entity, because more than likely they don't have that orthopedic specialty.
Correct.
And people don't understand that.
Yeah. Until you engage with it, you don't realize that. Until you get the letter and you're like, oh my, okay, that's a different physical location. Where are they sending me? You have to engage the process to figure that out, though. So I think it's time we talk about the elephant in the room, which is the VA. And our commitment, I'm sure there are plenty of podcasts out there talking about the VA and its deficiencies and shortfalls. What we're trying to do in this episode is educate our community, our National Guard soft community, what is essential, necessary, how to engage it. We're going to move into this topic as best we can. So how do we start? What's the tip of the spear on this part of the conversation?
LODs.
LODs. All right.
I'm gonna jump straight on that. It's a line of duty, right? So forever and ever, they've been neglected. They've just not been completed. You know, you've got a guy or a gal that gets injured downrange, and they think they have an LOD, but they didn't get it. That LOD is a surefire way to ensure care from the VA system. One
of the issues with the LODs is that, like, what people don't understand, especially for the Guard, is that an LOD is a process. It's an undertaking.
It's not a single piece of paper.
It's not just that one form or piece of paper. It's several things that happens on her desk, you know, that gets done, and it starts with the soldier and the unit. And so going through that process appropriately the right way and getting it completed is the only real way to say you have an LOD. Saying I got injured in a duty status and, you know, Jake saw me and the other, here's a note, you know, he documented everything, but that's not an LOD. So that LOD process has to be done separately, and that's where she comes in.
And Miranda, correct me if I'm wrong, but that LOD packet eventually goes all the way up to the National Guard Chief Surgeon's office, who has to approve it, sign off on it, and essentially own it. That, yes, this happened in a duty status. And without the National Guard Chief Surgeon's office signing off on that, you don't have an approved LOD.
Yes, so that's correct. The LODs have to go all the way up to the NGB level for approval. They have staff providers that have to officially adjudicate that for it to be considered an in the line of duty. And like Brennan was saying, it's a process, but it's also made more difficult than it has to be. You do have subject matter experts in your state that can assist you with that.
Okay.
It literally boils down to simply proving you were injured while in a duty status. The hardest thing that I've come across is getting the medical documentation from the soldiers. Now, going back to talking about all the systems linking up, that has made it a simpler process because now we can go out there and get those documents ourselves.
Okay.
Right? So I don't have to wait on the soldier, or maybe the soldier doesn't understand what I'm actually asking them to get. So my soldier went to the emergency room and we tell them, hey, make sure that you bring us your medical documents, and they bring me a discharge sheet.
That's exactly what I would do. Is that not correct?
Right. No, that is not right. No, that is not right. No, but that's what they all do.
Okay.
Even when you look them dead in the eye and I need your actual medical documents, I need your doctor's notes. You know?
Okay, yeah.
So
the things the doctor does not want to give me is what you need me to give to you.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. So just when someone says, hey, you need an LOD on this, and they're thinking, oh, that's a sheet of paper, and I just need confirmation that, yeah, I hit the ground like a sack of potatoes, messed up my knee, this guy saw it, we're done, got the LOD. You're like, not even close.
Not even remotely.
Okay.
And like we were saying, that process, the unit does a lot of that. It's an administrative process more than it is a medical process. So the medical stuff is done on the front end, and we need that to justify the administrative process that happens after that. And, you know, Guard guys, we exist in statuses all over the place, right? So typically we're Title 32, and then when we're deployed or on, you know, active duty orders, we're Title 10, and any of those things is a duty status, right? There's some nuance there with other things, but the nuts and bolts of it is if you were in a duty status, if you're at drill, if you're at AT, if you're at a school, if you're deployed, if you're in training and you're getting paid by the Army, then you're in a duty status. So if you got injured during that time frame, we have to be able to prove it, right? So that first medical visit and the follow-up visit, so that's what starts it. The administrative part goes through the unit, and the unit starts that process. So staying on your guys to make sure that the process is going through. And, you know, we usually reach out from the state surgeon's office. You know, her desk does. The other employees that we have at the state surgeon's office that manage part of that process will reach out and say, here's what we need to get this going, and they have time frames that they have to work with and all kinds of stuff. But it can be a lengthy process, but the majority of it really kind of breaks down at the soldier level to the unit level.
And that's y'all's job to know that process, correct?
And the units.
The medical readiness
everybody.
NCOs and the readiness NCOs are the ones that I hold accountable at the unit level.
I'm scared sitting here. You just saying you hold people accountable. I just have to acknowledge that. I got frightened like I was supposed to do something. So I think you're probably in the right position here in this organization.
Well, we host classes quarterly, and we always have a good turnout. So I know that the information's getting out there.
Okay.
But unit commanders and senior enlisted leadership are supposed to be aware of the process. They're supposed to go to those classes before they take command. The medical readiness NCOs and readiness NCOs are supposed to go through those classes as well. And our contact information is all over the state. So whenever these guys are faced with an LOD and they have questions about it, they know who to call and how to get there. So it's more of a is it being done thing.
Okay.
Hey, Ben, I do want to kind of loop back and try to demystify a couple of misconceptions about the VA.
Let's do it.
Yep. So thing one to know is you can absolutely, enroll in VA healthcare, and then two, receive VA healthcare as a guardsman. Whether you're MDay, whether you're AGR, whether you're OTOT, whatever that looks like, you can absolutely do that. You can absolutely file for a disability rating as a actively serving National Guardsman, and you can receive that rating.
Now, the guys that are listening that have been in for a while will probably say, but you can't be above this %.
Yep.
And that's not true.
And that's not true.
I deploy people at 100%.
You can be rated all the way up to 100%.
Yep.
And there's some issues with drawing that disability payment depending on your order status, but you can be rated at 100% and still continue to serve.
Yep. And so I am someone in that position. When I got off active duty, I got rated at 30% for getting shot in the neck. Thank you, VA.
Wow. For the record, I would have put it at least 45.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
All that to say, I went into my National Guard service with a disability rating, and a lot of guys transitioning from active duty come over with a disability rating, as they should. Mm-hmm. If you are a traditional guardsman, if you're an MDay guardsman, not only can you have that rating, you can absolutely draw that rating, that monthly compensation and disability compensation, and you can keep it. It's safe. You can have it. Now, what is not supposed to happen is you're not supposed to double dip. Where, hey, I'm on orders, and I'm also getting disability compensation. Now, it happens, and I can tell you that because it has happened to me.
Right. Yeah. That's not that uncommon.
Now, the functional reality of that is, and this is just wisdom, you should set that aside and not touch it, because at some point the VA is going to come knocking and say, hey, we would like $28,000 back in lump sum that we have given you over the years that we shouldn't have. And so there is some wisdom to be applied if you are drawing a full-time military DoD paycheck and also getting that VA disability rating. But it is absolutely possible to get a monthly disability paycheck from the VA and still honorably serve in the National Guard.
As an MDay guy, yeah.
The advantage to doing that would be engaging the system while you're still in the system. Is that why you would do that?
Absolutely. So one, you're getting health care, right?
Yeah.
I joked around a little bit about it, but I have actually had a really good experience with the VA here in our city. Some people may disagree with me, but I've had a really good experience. So one, getting health care. Two, continually building up that rating, even though right now I can't keep that money, or I'm setting that aside for when they do come back.
Somebody knocks on your front door, yeah.
But building up that rating, as you should and as you're entitled to, for when it's time to get out. We talked a little bit about this before we started. How sad is it to see somebody get to the point in their career where it's time to go? Everybody knows it's time to go, but they hang on too long because they're scared, because I haven't done anything with the VA and I don't know if I'm going to get anything with the VA, right? And we all know the guys and the girls who stayed too long, and it became a problem. Organizationally, it became a problem personally. Things started falling through the cracks, and a lot of that could have been avoided if, hey, you got to that point where you knew it was time to go, and you had already gotten your rating with the VA because you've been working on it for years.
Yeah. It really makes that transition, which transition is a tough thing anyway in the military. But it makes that transition even easier. And let's put it this way. Nobody remembers Michael Jordan in a Wizards jersey. You know what I mean? Like, he was with the Bulls, and that's how we like to remember him, correct? So I think what you're saying is preparing or getting ready for engaging that preferred glide path.
Yep.
So that, because you know who's not unaware that it's time is the soldier.
Yep.
The soldier also knows, and that's when on my side with HPW, where I see these really unhealthy coping mechanisms really tick up, man, which only make the medical problems and the mental health problems even worse.
Yep.
So now we've got something that we could have like maintained and managed and kept at a particular level, and I would propose, you guys may disagree with me, but could have even extended career.
Yes.
If we had engaged this earlier instead of putting it off and taking an avoidant posture, then we might have been able to tack 3-4 years onto the end of this career, especially time on team. But I don't have a time machine. You know, H2F and HPW, we don't have a time machine. You guys don't either. So part of it is educating the formation about the benefits of it. So demystifying, like, you can do these things. They're going to pay you. It's not actually your money, but money isn't the real benefit anyway. It's being ready for making your own decisions from a healthy spot in your career.
Absolutely.
And to clarify that, I mean, yet when they're still serving and they're an M-Day guy, they can keep that money.
Yep.
I mean, that's theirs. The only time it becomes a problem is if they go on to active orders. Like if you are deploying or if you're on OTOT orders or AGR, things like that, you're not supposed to be able to collect.
Yeah.
So I'll clarify that. If you are receiving any compensation from the military, it's going to be offset with the VA.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is if you get a drill check, that amount from that drill check will be deducted from whatever your compensation would have been. So if your compensation vastly outweighs what you would make on a typical drill weekend, soldiers can waive that drill check.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they simply drill for points. But once you go into any kind of, OTOT, ADOS, Title 10, Title 32, you just completely waive your VA payments
Yeah.
and receive those and receive your military money
For that
instead.
time. I think guys take one or two approaches. Probably the smarter one is what you're talking about. The other one that you're talking about, Jake, is like, look, just set it aside, pretend it's not yours, and settle it up, right?
Yeah, they never do
happen. Yeah. So, yeah.
There is one other thing I want to clarify and demystify. And this kind of goes, this is some like medical admin nerd stuff, right? AR 40-501 talks about this, how a VA disability rating is not going to have any factor in determining your retention. So the number itself, whether it be 0 or 100%, matters not in deciding, hey, can we keep this guy?
That feels completely counterintuitive.
Yep. Now, here's what does matter. What is that number, what is that rating attached to as far as a diagnosis?
The underlying condition is what the 40-501 refers to as a retention or not retainable feature. So
Okay.
the percentage, the number, like you said, doesn't matter. What does that number mean?
And
why
here's,
are you that
here's
rating?
here's where I have seen guys where that gets a little confusing, a little gray, and sometimes even count against them, right? It's, hey man, you're 100% and you put all your eggs in one basket. And typically it's like a mental health basket. So you're rated at 100% by the VA for PTSD. What that's going to cause at the state surgeon's office level is a deeper look. All right. There's no automatic anything, right? But it is going to cause a deeper look of, hey, are your symptoms stable? How many meds are you taking? What were your last records? And again, are you stable on a stable dosage? Can we actually deploy you based on the guidance that's out there? Versus, let's take that guy, set him aside, and then let's take another guy who he's got 100%, but he's got a bunch of different things going on. He's got 10% here for his knees, 10% here for his hips, 10% here for his shoulders. Those are two totally different 100%s,
right,
and are going to cause two totally different ways of looking at those records. And so, again, just want to kind of demystify that.
Yeah.
You know, one of the buzz phrases I've heard for years is think outside the box. Well, there's really nothing outside the box, right? It's really just learning what are the actual limits of the box.
Yeah.
And as I've had to dig into policies over the years, it's learning what the actual limits of the box are and learning to play within those limits.
Yeah. And that's the way that you guys operate, right? Let's do everything we can to help this soldier.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And help their career and help their life after career, which does happen.
Yes.
There's life after you get out of uniform.
Yep.
That's the big important part too, as we talk to these guys that are retiring, you know, because, you know, you can have 100% rating and all these different things, and behavioral health might be one of those things. And then we add on to your behavioral health, the transition.
Yep.
What's the next 20, 30, 40 years look like? How broken did we make you and then send you home, you know?
Right.
And so guys dealing with that mental transition. I mean, guys like me, I joined when I was 17 years old and spent my formative years in GWAT and in, you know, an SF battalion. Usually doesn't bode well for a stable person anyway, but then, you know, 20, 30 years down the road, what's transition look like to a guy like that?
Yeah.
And, you know, how do we deal with that emotionally and intellectually, changing the entire person that you are or what you think you are? And so we talk about that on a daily basis with guys that are retiring. And the medical part of it, getting the ratings, going through those processes is emotionally daunting too.
Scary
Now I'm
as hell is what it is, yeah.
documenting and putting a number on my weaknesses and dysfunctions.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sit well with anybody, especially these 18 series guys, you know, and being told that you have 10% weakness in this particular part of your body. And it's like, whoa, hold on.
That's how it's perceived, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that just makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
This probably goes without saying, but let's drop it into the space. This is really complex.
It is.
There's nothing straightforward about this.
No.
And we kind of talked about there are times that I think this system, this bureaucracy, is not meant to be understood. It was not designed to be understood. I have met some amazing people within the VA, within the system, right? I'd like to think, you know, Miranda, Brennan, and myself are some of those amazing people, right? Because we actually care. We're trying to do a good thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But it's personality dependent. What happens when we leave? What happens when that amazing person at the VA leaves, that amazing advocate leaves? Well, now you're left with the system and the bureaucracy that wasn't necessarily designed to be understood, and the knowledge base has just left.
Yes.
And so that's why you find such a mixed bag across the force and really across states and cities. Because sometimes, in a lot of cases, you have knowledge base that is just left.
Yeah.
We talk about advocacy, you know, who's the soldier's advocate, who's the patient's advocate, right? Ultimately and primarily, you are your own advocate, right? So nobody cares about your health and your career like you do. And then you should have, hopefully, in your system, in your state, in the unit or the particular guard state that you're in, soldier and patient advocates in medical. And then you should have those in the VA, and you should have those in your civilian healthcare system. What typically happens, especially in a bureaucracy, is that it protects itself. It's its own advocate. And it seems like, at least on the surface, that it's working against the patient and against the soldier. It's advocating for the organization. So in one way that, you know, we as Army providers, we do represent and advocate for the organization, for the commander. What's providing the commander and the state and the Army the best soldier, right? The best piece of equipment,
Yes.
right? And then the other side is, how am I advocating for that soldier to the organization to make sure that I keep him or her right for the organization, appropriately serving and capable. And so who's advocating for who? And ultimately, if you're not advocating for yourself, you're not going to get the rest of it anyway.
Right. So Miranda, you sit there as kind of the in-between of, I'm thinking about the group or the battalion. I have to think about those things. It's part of the job, right? It's what the soldiers signed up for. They didn't sign up and say, take care of me. They signed up and said, I'd like to do amazing things and free the oppressed around the world, right? That's the goal. So you have to keep that in mind. You also have to keep the soldier in mind. Let's talk about for a second, if you do have to deliver bad news, what does that look like? How do you do that?
So I'm going to address the first part of that, where you're kind of on the in-between, right?
Yep.
So we have a soldier we've identified that has an issue. It's on the fence as far as the regulation goes of retainability.
Yep.
I typically look at the soldier and ask them what they want. Mm-hmm. Do you want to be retained? And then we make a path for that, for treatment.
Yep.
Right? Do you want to go home? Are you done? Then we start working a path for a board, right? As far as bad news goes, I typically try to involve one of my docs, and get them involved, especially when it comes to some of the SF guys, because fortunately for me,
right,
mine are familiar, right?
Yeah.
But I don't like to deliver that news individually. I'm a nurse, and right, wrong, or indifferent, my opinion isn't going to be counted as lofty as my counterparts, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then, so I'll either pull one of them in, or the deputy state surgeon, or the state surgeon.
Yeah.
And it's just a conversation that you have to have with them. If whatever that condition may be has deteriorated to the point that you're just not fit to fight. Mm-hmm. It sucks, and I hate that.
Yeah.
But it's not just us protecting the organization, it's protecting you.
Right. Yeah.
I know me and Jake have talked about this in length over the past couple of years. There's a point where a soldier can't soldier anymore. And like she said, it's not as much for the organization as it is for you. Like we're advocating on your behalf here. We are going to hurt you more. Mm-hmm. The longer you stay. What's transition going to look like if we keep you for 5 more years but beat you to death? I don't want to send you home that broken. Mm-hmm. We need to protect what we have left and cut it off now before we get worse. And like I said, Jake's had these guys, specifically the SF guys, come in at that point in their career where I am that broken and I can't do this anymore without saying it. Yeah. The evidence says I'm broken and I can't do that anymore. The paperwork says I'm broken and I can't do that anymore. And how does the conversation go?
Yeah. That conversation, it doesn't get siloed, right? So it's not just with a provider at the state surgeon's office, but it's going to be with the soldier. It's going to be with that unit provider. It's going to be with that unit commander. So we're all going to get online and make sure that we're making the decision that, one, we all agree with, and then 2, is best for the soldier. Listen, most of the guys in the battalion I was in who were questionable, we found a way to retain them.
Yeah. Can confirm.
Yep.
I watched it happen.
Yep. Now, looking back, do I think some of them should have gone home a little bit sooner? Maybe, right? Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen this. You see guys walking around with, they got spinal stimulators in their spine, and they're finding every way to continue to contribute. And that's the beautiful thing about about this organization, right? These guys want to contribute.
Yeah. Trying to find that balance between a noble and magnificent behavioral feature and dysfunction, right?
Yep.
Yeah. You realize that that's kind of an emotional dysfunction.
And so, listen, we're not looking to kick people out. I don't want people to go, especially in today's recruiting and retention environment, right? But there is a point where you have to have a conversation with the soldier, the commander, the sergeant major, and hey, do y'all think this is still a good idea? Because when I have started that conversation, sometimes what you find out is people have been having doubts for a long time, but nobody wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part, is somebody's got to go first, right? But I think the takeaway that I'm understanding newly in this conversation is even those conversations happen within community.
Yes.
The beautiful part about National Guard SF is they are a tight-knit community. So it's not just a one-off conversation in a dark side room somewhere. Mm-hmm. When it gets to be some difficult news, and I think we could even back up and say even taking a knee for 6 months would be difficult news, then it isn't going to be one guy with a sheet of paper on his desk.
Yep.
There's a lot of people saying, hey, these are the left and the rights here. This is what we're talking about. This is what we're looking at. Even maintaining the soldier's voice. What is it that you want here? What are you after? Because sometimes a guy just needs permission to say, man, yeah, I'm broke down a little bit. Let me get some help.
Yep,
and then this is a conversation I deal with a lot inside of HPW. Who's going to talk to the team sergeant? Who's going to let them know? What's the agreement there? If I step aside, is somebody moving in? Like, who's going to take my place? All these conversations are happening on a regular basis, and guys are getting back on the teams and extending their careers, right? So I think part of the demystifying here is that is not the standard conversation. We don't get to like that terminus every person that engages the system.
Yep.
Sometimes it is necessary, but I'm with you, Jake. I think the soldier knows before that conversation even happens that it's probably pending. My proposal today would be that a soldier in that position is kind of hoping for it.
It's a rare thing where we have to have that conversation, but occasionally it happens. My hope is that we identify guys theoretically as E7s, right? And we get them some help, and we get them healthy, and all of a sudden we're not asking an E7 to leave. We're promoting somebody into an E8 team sergeant position as a healthy team sergeant. That's the hope from my foxhole, is that's where we end up going. And then he becomes a future sergeant major who knows to advocate for his guys and say, hey, let's take a little bit of time. Let's get healthy, because we have to think 6 months, 12 months down the road here.
This is already happening more than it used to. Right? And I see the nods in the studio. This isn't wishful thinking. It's actually a theory that's been put into practice that is working now. It's a new Army, which I know sometimes is used negatively, but in this instance is used very positively. So we're running a little bit out of time here today, but I would like to talk about, since I have you guys at the table, which is a rare gift, just best practices or suggestions for maintaining health during service. Before all of this has to happen. Now, obviously, we can't prevent injuries that happen on jumps and deployments and those sorts of things, but some of these injuries are self-imposed. I think that's the safest way to say that. So how do we navigate that part of a soldier's life?
If it hurts, get it checked out.
That's fair.
Don't suck it up and rub dirt in it. As we've, been told our entire career.
Yep.
If it hurts, and it hurts for a week, go get it checked out. And if it ends up being something, get in contact with your provider at the unit level. And if they can't give you directive, get in contact with your state surgeon's office, because they can help you walk that path.
I mean, we say it on jumps, any injury, no matter how small, report it, get it seen, things like that. And so getting past that mental barrier of not wanting to report stuff. Yep. If you're injured, if you're hurt, talk about it. Professional athletes, which I put, we usually do put the SF guys in that same category.
Agreed.
And you imagine a guy with those physical abilities, if they hurt somewhere, they don't neglect that. They are immediately getting seen by like 10 docs and getting MRIs of everything. And because they know that their physical ability, their health is their livelihood. For us, for our guys, it's your mission and your team. So if you don't report those things, you don't get it seen, it could lead to something that puts you off the team, and you don't want that. So get it seen now. Don't wait time. Don't waste time. Don't be threatened by the possibility of a weakness or anything like that. Go ahead, get it seen.
Yeah. And then what I would say is, I'm saying this in the context of being extremely blessed in our state to have a battalion headquarters and 2 companies, a line company and a support company.
Yeah.
So we've got a plethora of resources, and we're right, our group headquarters is right next door in the next state over, right?
Yep.
I think where guys are really going to have problems if you're one of these outlying companies out in one of these states that don't have battalion support or don't have group support. What I would tell those guys is you need to make friends with your state surgeon. Understand who's in your state surgeon's office. Introduce yourself to a nurse case manager, to your deputy state surgeon. Get to know those folks because they'll be able to help you out. And I guarantee you that they want to help you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so much of it does come down to ownership. And we are learning new things, too, about alcohol, about sleep deprivation, about sympathetic, parasympathetic. Mm-hmm. There's so much out there that soldiers can educate themselves on. This is a big part of this, right? Some of it's a slow burn. It isn't that I got injured on a jump. It's that I've kind of been injuring myself a little bit every day for the past 16 years with some of my habits. I mean, I'm not making this up, right? You do see these things happen in your offices, like, well, here's the evidence that this isn't some acute injury from one thing. This is a lot of little things over time.
Absolutely.
I think it's worth talking about in this environment, maybe just for a moment, to help the soldier who's in that frame of mind. I'm not trying to get an LOD, but I'm just drinking the hell out of myself every night just to get in bed because my back hurts. Yeah. There's those sorts of things are a little bit difficult to navigate. Do we have an answer for those things?
And I'd say it's still pretty nuanced. I mean, the individual is going to be different each time, but there are resources. There are things out there. I had a conversation with a guy today about stellate ganglion block.
Yeah.
And he was a conventional guy. So, I mean, not an SF guy, but same sort of picture. And he would be a great candidate for those resources. So things like that for them are still out there. There's stellate ganglion block. There's all these other therapeutic methods and options, especially for alcohol abuse and stuff like that. The first step is honesty,
Yep.
And then the second is seeking care, actually going out and saying, hey, I'm honest with myself. I'm going to be honest with you. This is what I got going on, and I need help. What do you got? There's a ton of stuff out there, but we tailor it to you. So if you come in and say, I have these problems, I'm going to find you something for those problems that works with you, the individual. There is no 100% blanket covered issue for anybody.
Would be nice if it worked that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If there was one pill, if there was one treatment or one organization, that'd be great, but it's not.
Yeah.
So to address the alcoholism, we are sending soldiers to inpatient treatment, and they are going through their treatment, and they're being retained, and they're being deployed. So, again, that's one of those things everybody thinks if I have an issue and I'm found out that they're just going to send me home. No, we want to help you. Mm-hmm. And I've seen it personally. It's still happening. If the issue's identified and we're given the opportunity to help the soldier and the soldier is willing to take the help, that's where we run into the biggest issue.
Okay.
It's the willingness to accept the help, because now they have to accept that there is a problem. Mm-hmm. And that's behavioral health or, any kind of physical. The majority of the physical things we see are chronic. Yeah. Not acute injuries. Mm-hmm. They are these chronic, especially with this community, it's the jumps, it's the amount of weight you may have had to, ruck with or whatever. But they'll just drag that leg through their career. Whereas if we would admit we have a problem, seek treatment, let's document that treatment, make sure that it is put in your service treatment record. I know people have never heard these words before, but here it is. Yeah. You have this really cool thing called a service treatment record, where if you provide that documentation to every state's different. For us, it's your nurse case management team. We make sure that is documented forever and ever and ever. Amen. So, years later, if that first jump, you hurt your back, and now we're on, jump 90 and we've hurt ourselves again, I've got the initial documentation so I can show that this is absolutely throughout the course of your career been an issue, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, like I said, that's the biggest issue and hurdle is identifying the problem, seeking the treatment, getting the documentation to the right people so that it follows you through your career. Mm-hmm. in a good way, not a bad way.
Yeah, in a good way. Well, let me, again, with the devil's advocate, I just feel like I have to. And
Come on.
Yeah. Like, all right, doc, all right, PA, all right, nurse, I trust you. It's the people behind you I don't trust. Right? I'm sure this conversation has had a lot. Like, I get it. I get that you get it. But once this is on paper and once it goes all the way up to all the other people, that's what I don't trust. What I've heard today is you guys have practical experience and evidence for the things that you're saying today. This has worked. This has worked. This has worked. Everyone's always concerned that the Wizard of Oz is back there somewhere trying to kill career. But you guys aren't seeing that happening today.
No, because those things, the kill your career kind of stuff, has to go through a process. There's no button that gets pushed and
The
a day
trap
later
door
you're
falls
gone.
out. Yeah.
If you go through that process the right way and things are documented appropriately and all that, it still takes usually us, one of us three, to pull that trigger to move things down that line to separate or to retain. And so that initial step of getting it documented and getting it reported is not the career ender. Again, I think we should be advocates for those guys as well as the organization. And I can't say that's always going to be the case everywhere.
Yeah.
But here I can tell you with certainty that, like he said, nobody's trying to kill your career. Nobody's trying to kick you out. We're here for you, but it's important that we're here for you now as well as the end of career. And these things pay dividends when we do it right. So
Lack of trust, I would say, is probably the reason for the underutilization, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, 100%. But that's why I keep harping on know the individuals that are in these positions, know who works in your state surgeon's office. For us, know who is your assigned nurse case management team. And make sure that, so we're not out headhunting people. And so what I mean by that is it's not like that fancy system we told you that talks to each other so I can see if, you're going to your civilian provider for whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not in that system looking for things just at random.
We're not logging in the morning going, let's see how Ben's doing today.
With like my evil laugh in the background. Like typically when we come across issues for soldiers, it's either during like a PHA or a pre-deployment, but you're going to be found out no matter what. And what I mean by that, the same system that I'm looking at, if you go to deploy, they're scrubbing soldiers through that exact same system.
Yeah.
So we have to identify it before they do so that we can, get them a waiver.
There you go. Let's pregame
going back to trust, you've got us at your state level to protect you if you give me the power to do that. You have us to help you, to guide you, if you give us the tools to do that. Now, once you get to a MOB site, you're just a number, and they will refrag you that fast.
And we experienced that last year at the SF company's last deployment, where hey, we did a scrub on that roster 9 months prior, and it identifies issues. That's a lot better than waiting until you actually get to MOB station and now you've got 2 weeks to fix whatever has been identified versus 9 months. And it just takes the anxiety level down for everybody.
Okay, so I'm going to say it.
Go ahead.
Testosterone and ADHD medicine.
Okay.
Depending on what area of operation you go to, you can deploy with those with a waiver.
Yeah. There's
mind blown. I know.
Yeah. There's some discrepancy in what you just said there.
Complications.
Okay.
I said
with each one of those
things. Depending on what area of operation.
I'm not disagreeing. No, it's absolutely true. There are issues with those things that we have to get by, just like she was saying about the waiver.
Yep.
So, but the first step to that is don't freaking lie about it and be honest up front. And I tell guys all the time, I'll have an offline conversation with you. You can tell me stuff offline. If you're worried about this, and I will reassure you that this is not going to screw with your career. And I've got to get 2 briefings in the next 2 days on units deploying and telling them up front, do not freaking lie about your health. Tell us the truth now before we get into like 2 weeks of deploying and we're up against the wall and we can't get you deployed because you lied. They're going to find it. Don't let them find it later. Find it now. Let us fix it. And we do. I mean, we deployed thousands of soldiers so far, our team together, and worked our process the way that we work it. And our refrad rate, that rate of people that go to mob station but don't deploy, is minuscule. So, I mean, we're taking care of people and we're keeping them, and they're deploying and they're doing what they want to do in their career. So,
sounds like you guys are an elite level team. And you,
I'm going to say it was a lot of trial and error in the beginning.
well, however you got there, you got there. But I think this conversation is very encouraging for me because it feels like it's what's required to, in a healthy way, care for these 18 series guys. You know, you just don't bring a knife to a gunfight in this scenario. You've got to have people that are spun up on this. And I'm hopeful that this episode is going to kind of bridge that gap of trust. So, hey, you are actually engaging a team that is there to help you be the best soldier you can possibly be for as long as you can possibly be it. Now, if you don't want that, then don't engage this team, right? But if you do want that, it's an email, it's a phone call, and then we're going to navigate this for you and think about a lot of different things, broaden out the scope of the left and the rights that probably you're not even thinking about to make sure that we can get you down the road. I don't mean to mischaracterize y'all's work, but I've been around it enough, and this conversation I think has sealed it for me that we need to be pushing more of these team guys your direction to be proactive. It really comes down to ownership, which we've discussed a little bit already today, wouldn't you guys say?
Absolutely. And, we started this conversation out with, why I kind of went down this rabbit hole, right? Wanting to get guys taken care of, wanting to get guys care that need it. I'm not trying to be your mom, not trying to be your dad, but if you need care, let's get it. And then two, at some point, we all take off the uniform. Mm-hmm. And I want guys to exit well. And I'm tired of seeing the cook from another unit get more benefits and get better care than an 18 series guys with multiple deployments and a Purple Heart and all the things. It just that got to me, and that's why I started kind of down this rabbit hole.
Thank you for tuning in to the Soldier Fund podcast. If you're inspired by the stories of these elite citizen warriors and want to support their mission, visit us at thesoldierfund.org. Your contributions help us to continue to back the Special Forces soldiers of the National Guard as they fight around the world. Until next time, stay committed to stand with those who serve.